G'day, folks. I thought today I would complete a Phantom Draft as a little bit of a thank you for those at home who have gotten behind me and supported me with all the views, all the likes, and yeah, all the general interest in my thoughts despite having not watched a second of junior football this year. I'm finding that to be completely staggering, but yeah, clearly my knowledge from what I've seen in years past, there's enough there to still obviously have an opinion that matters to enough people. So yeah, thank you to all of you at home who have gotten behind me in the videos I've been making. So, yeah, and thanks as well to a student of mine on Friday who introduced me to this website. Otherwise, yeah, I wouldn't know about this website. So, yeah, for those of you at home, if you want to try it, it's draftphantom.com. But, yeah, today I'll be giving my best attempt. So, let's see what happens. So, pick one, West Coast are on the clock. So I don't think they'll have to look too far through this list. I think they'll go straight to Harley Reid. North Melbourne, pick two. So looking at the options, just taking a think. So I'll set this out as a Phantom Draft where it's not who I believe a club should pick. I'm actually going to attempt to go with what I believe clubs will actually do on draft day. So with North Melbourne, I'm suspecting it'll be Jed Walter, Zane Dersma, and Colby McKercher will be the three that they'll be considering. It's just the question will be the order, and what the order will be out of those will remain to be seen. If I was picking, I'd like Daniel Curtin here, but I suspect with North Melbourne, they'll be, yeah, possibly going in a different direction. If North Melbourne really wanted Walter, I believe they would go with him first up, or at least that would be the most logical approach given Gold Coast have so many academy players that they want to obviously be matching bids on. So that would be obviously what would put the most stress on the Suns. But yeah, I think they might actually, North Melbourne might go McKercher first given the sheer quality of the season that he's had. And I'm suspecting as well that North Melbourne realised that whether it's pick two, whether it's pick three, that a bid comes, that, yeah, look, it'll be a matched bid on Walter. So I'll go Walter, and Gold Coast have matched the bid. There we go, folks. And the next one, well, I think Dersma will be North Melbourne's preferred. So if you're looking at whether it's like a Riley Sanders, well, North Melbourne have their midfield, so I think they'll be right there. They could look at a Nick Watson, but for a 170 centimetre forward, look, it is, a lot of people would say probably a bit early. And yeah, usually you can get those sort of small forwards a bit later on. But yeah, I think maybe a Dersma would be what North Melbourne would go for as a local talent. Hawthorn. So Daniel Curtin would make sense with Denver, Granger, Barras not really developing. I do think that that would be a consideration. Midfielders, they've drafted a few in recent years. The other name that's making sense is Nick Watson, and an Eastern talent as well, which would make a lot of sense at Hawthorn as well. And being a rebuilding team, they might have a slight sort of favouring towards local talent. And the other thing I'm thinking as well is with Hawthorn, their forward line probably could do with a bit of regeneration as well, where they've lost Brockman over the off-season, Luke Brewster's getting on in years. Tricky call, they could go either way. Hawthorn are willing to go with Western Australians sometimes, but yeah, I think the local talent, particularly being from the Eastern area, I think maybe Nick Watson might be their pick, potentially. Bulldogs are on the clock. Curtin would make a lot of sense again. Riley Sanders would make sense just with their midfield. I feel there's a bit of uncertainty around there where you had Jack McRae edged out of that best 22 late in the year, and then Bailey Smith, well, does he leave at the end of the season? We'll have to see. So he'll be one they'll be definitely thinking about. None of the others really stand out that I'm looking at this stage. So yeah, maybe Sanders just for the midfield factor. With their midfield starting to age, might be the way they go. And again, with each of these picks, Daniel Curtin would be my personal pick, but I think the Bulldogs go with a Riley Sanders. Melbourne are up next. So Curtin, possibly, you've got an ageing defence for Melbourne where you've got, obviously, May, you've got Lever, Harrison Petty, does he leave in the future? Or does he get shifted forward? There's some of the things that Melbourne would have to consider there. Ethan Reid they could consider, with obviously Luke Jackson gone, with Brodie Grundy gone. Well, there's definitely room for another ruckman, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bid there. Nate Caddy could be considered. It depends as well. With Melbourne, they have to consider they've picked a few key forwards recently. So they've got Van Rooyen, they've got Jefferson they picked last year. So it depends on their, I guess, level of optimism around particularly Jefferson. Van Rooyen looks good. But yeah, Jefferson I'm personally not hugely convinced on. He's a bit of a toss of the coin really for me. So Caddy is one that they should consider. O'Sullivan they could consider for a key defender. I think they'll probably place a bid on Ethan Reid would make sense. Again, just given, I guess, the ruck dynamic with Gawn, obviously, in his latter years, and maybe they're thinking maybe they should have a successor, so that'd make sense. But yeah, Gold Coast would match the bids. From there, just, yeah, having a quick look through. Melbourne could do with a Caleb Windsor type. Maybe a James Leake. Curtin's tempting. Again, I would certainly be picking Curtin in Melbourne's situation. But yeah, with Melbourne, I think they'll be pretty conscious of their premiership window is now. So, yeah, maybe they don't go for a Curtin just yet. Because I think once you've sort of got May and Lever going, yeah, toss of the coin. I'm not sure which way they go. Maybe I'll just go Windsor for this pick, just because I've been hearing lots of rumours going around that GWS are expecting for him to still be on the board, and then there's talk about a West Coast trade. That's one I've been hearing through the Twitterverse, and there's a lot of people who seem quite confident on that. So, yeah, that's why I'm playing it out this way. It doesn't seem like there's a trade function, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to act as if there's a draft day trade. So I think this is probably a bit outside the scope of this Draft Phantom website. So maybe this is a feature they could possibly include for future renditions. But I'm actually going to pretend that there is a trade of West Coast's 2024 first, and that they're also going to trade their, as it currently stands, pick 25. And I'm going to suspect that it will be GWS give their 2024 first, the pick 9 as it currently stands, and also as it currently stands, their pick 18. So this is picking from a West Coast perspective. So that would mean that it would be Daniel Curtin going at pick 9. So maybe I'm getting a bit adventurous with this, but yeah, there's just enough people sort of saying, hey, there's something to this that... yeah, look, I'll place that bet and pretend that pick 9 is West Coast. Geelong, Nate Caddy would make sense. They've got, obviously, Jeremy Cameron. They've got Tom Hawkins, both sort of in their latter years. Hawkins might only have a year or two left. And you've got Cameron, who's a 30-year-old now, so that has to be considered. O'Sullivan, they could consider. That'd make sense for them. Darcy Wilson, if they wanted speed, maybe. Leak they could consider. And I'm mostly using logic, just thinking about, well, what positions do each of these clubs need, as well as from what limited people have told me on Twitter. So, let's see. Geelong, I reckon Nate Caddy. You've got the Josh Caddy connection with Geelong, so, and with Nate being the cousin, I could potentially see that making sense, and particularly with Geelong needing those sort of long-term forwards as well. I think there's a possibility we see Nate Caddy joining Geelong. Essendon, I'm just thinking what they would like. O'Sullivan, they could consider. Their sort of young key defence stocks haven't looked too healthy of late. Reid will matter. We'll have to see sort of how that goes. Does Nick Cox, where does he play? Does he become a key defender in the future? They're things that Essendon would obviously have to think about if they're considering another key defender. Darcy Wilson I could see going around this range, maybe. James Leake as well, if he's not already picked up. Volstrup maybe. I could see going. Yeah, just looking down the range at some of the possibilities. I reckon maybe a leak. Essendon have added quite a few midfielders in recent years and have enough midfielders, and they've got a few outside options, so maybe the versatility of a leak. And they've got enough key positioners as well, so if he's on the table, I could potentially see that as a possibility. Adelaide next. O'Sullivan could be considered. The key defence stocks are a bit thin for Adelaide. Darcy Wilson could make sense again. Hardiman. Interesting they've got him in this range. Tholstrup maybe. Adelaide could do with a ruck, but it just feels a bit early. Okay. I'll go O'Sullivan. They need the key defender, and I think he'd be a really good fit there. And we're back to Melbourne. Wilson could be considered. Maybe Murphy. Tholstrup, maybe. I'm finding the mid-forward connection is a bit weak for Melbourne, so maybe they double down on that. A Dematia, maybe if they want a bit more of an injection of pace, an explosion. Schoenmaker could make sense. No, I think we're probably going a bit deep down the list. Okay, I'll go Tholstrup to Melbourne. He gives them options both sort of mid-forward, but he's more of a forward, so I think that works. Sydney next. And look, with Sydney, maybe their midfield could do with a bit of a boost. So I think they might have interest potentially in a midfielder. But I could sort of make a case for their key position stocks as well. So there's a few there that they could consider. It's interesting, Jake Rogers is expected to be picked this early, so if he's the top rated midfielder, let's plug him in for now and let's see if he's matched. Okay, Gold Coast match as expected. And then, yeah, back to Sydney. So, Darcy Wilson, Ollie Murphy, maybe's. Dematia, maybe that's the way I'm leaning. Collard could make sense if they wanted a forward. Although they added a few recently. Archer Reed, probably a bit early for me. He hasn't really shown the improvement since last year in looking at his numbers. Young Ruckman maybe, but feels a bit early. George Stevens maybe. I could see that, although it's saying the range is a bit later, so that sort of puts me off slightly. I can't speak to the accuracy of the range predictions on this website. Cleary, I think they'll match on later. So I guess if they're expecting a sort of stronger ball winning mid, I don't think they'll go with a George, just in sort of thinking aloud now. So I'll dismiss that thought for now. This is a hard pick, actually. I'm not too sure who to go with. Maybe a Dematia just for the versatility could be an option. And then you've got Darcy Wilson, which is a tempting one. And look, maybe with they lost Dylan Stevens, so that could possibly make sense for Sydney. I'd be curious to know in Phantom Drafts who a lot of people have to Sydney. They're a hard team to actually pick for, honestly, with this one. I might go Darcy Wilson. Interstate teams typically don't fear country boys, so yeah. With a bit of sort of reluctance and thought, that's the way I'll go with that pick. St Kilda, getting tricky. They could do with another sort of key forward. Obviously, they've got Max King, then it's sort of hoping others are healthy, and look, the others are a bit undersized, so maybe, although it feels very early for Jordan Croft, that obviously they're sort of projecting he's the highest and most likely to go first in this range. Will McCabe, okay. Harry Dematia, Here's one I'm tempted to go with just because the Saints sort of lack that injection of something. It's just a bit of a vanilla midfield in the sense that you've got Jack Steele and Brad Crouch as your main ones, so that could make a bit of sense. Lance Collard, look, he brings scoreboard impact that the other small forwards don't to the same degree, at least sort of accounting for age, so he's a maybe for that one. Yeah. So for me here, it's getting hard because, I haven't been following what the others have been doing for Phantom Draft, so I really don't know who St Kilda are looking at necessarily. But it's just really sort of thinking logically, like, yeah, they could do with another key defender. They're a bit thin for key defenders, so an Ollie Murphy's a maybe. To move it on, I'll just go with Dematia because they could do with that injection in the midfield. But I could equally go with a tall. So it's a hard one to go, but yeah, I'll just go Dematia to move it on. I just feel like it's a bit early for the likes of, say, a Croft. So that's the way I've gone there. Okay. And I might just do this 17 to 32 part just because, I don't know who's rumoured to go to whichever club. I just, other than what people have been sort of tweeting at me, that's sort of the extent to my knowledge around that. Adelaide, I could actually see Adelaide bidding on a few players because that is something they haven't shown any reluctance to do in the past. So I could see them dropping some bids as they think about what they want to do with this particular pick. So that's the way I'm immediately leaning. I could see them potentially looking at a ruck at some stage, maybe with their next pick. Probably a bit early here, though, for me. Ashton Moir, interesting, but for Adelaide, I like their front half, so I'm not really looking at any forwards for them. Okay, yeah, I'm probably going a bit far down the order here now. Schoenmaker would be a good fit, but it's suggesting that it's probably a bit early for his range. For me, I'd like to see a bit of a boost in Adelaide's defence, and they've also lost Jude as well, which further takes away, so that's a possible direction, but I personally wouldn't go for a midfielder here because Adelaide's midfield is overstocked, so that's something I would not be expecting them to do in just, thinking about their list dynamics. So what I'll do, I will place a bid on Jordan Croft, which the Dogs match expectedly. And I could also see them if McCabe is expected in this range. And for me, again, it's earlier than I would be going, and as with Croft. But, Adelaide don't mind bidding on players. So I'm going to assume they're going to do the same here. Now, thinking further down the order, so it likes Ollie Murphy as a pick around here, and Adelaide do have the key defence needs, so that would make quite a bit of sense going that direction. Thinking to others, so you've got Hardiman, who can obviously generate drive across halfback. You've got Archie Roberts, who's another in that category. So they're probably the ones that I'm sort of thinking quite likely. So would Adelaide prefer a key defender or a general defender? Is what I have to go through. Where really, I guess, in thinking to both, they really do need both quite a bit. So obviously for key defenders, they've got Butts, they've got Murray. Actually, I think they've got another one who's come through in the past year. So maybe I'll just go general defender in thinking aloud. So let's go Hardiman. Often I find the interstate teams have a bit more of a reluctance to do with the Vic Metro boys, so let's go Hardiman. North Melbourne, key defender they could use, small forward they could use, general defender they could use. Archer Reed, they could do with a second key forward, though for me it feels early. Ruckman, maybe. And I need to think to it as well. So again, I'm assuming with GWS, as per this one, that it's going to be in West Coast hands. So I'm pretending pick 9 West Coast is Curtin. So they've already got their key defender. So I'm even thinking ahead to what West Coast would be wanting next. So I think maybe they'd go with Collard being a local talent. That would be a possibility there. Or they might try and possibly match up. So you've obviously got Harley Reid as a Vic Country boy. Maybe they go with a Vic Country player, potentially with one of with this upcoming pick. So any country boys who would make sense for GWS. Stevens may not make too much sense because they've got Tom Green, so maybe they won't go necessarily that direction. Yeah, not sure. Hard. From here on, it gets really hard, actually, for this particular Phantom. To keep things moving, because obviously they're on the clock and they would have to be a bit more decisive. So, yeah, I'm really quite stuck on this one as to where they would go. Because, again, they want to get in before West Coast on any that West Coast would want, but at the same time, it's really giving that consideration to, well, who can they almost force West Coast to take that they wouldn't be interested in? That's really the key strategic approach for North Melbourne here. Okay. Yeah, and look, with Collard, the other thing I'd think of is, look, is a WA boy. I'm not sure whether he'd want to travel, so maybe North Melbourne would go away from that direction and maybe just let West Coast take him. So maybe that's just the trick. So to move it on for the purposes of this video, I'll just plug Murphy in there for North Melbourne. And then, again, assuming West Coast pick 21, probably Collard. I'll just have a quick look whether there's anyone else I think that they could consider as an alternative or might consider. The thing I always think about with West Coast is they do tend to have a liking towards those who have been good for a few years. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's an Ashton Moir around this point, although it's saying it's a bit ahead of his range. And even a Jack Deline, again, he's well performed from years past. So that's something to think about as well. And actually the other one who's well performed for a few years is George Stevens. So yeah, maybe it's out of Stevens and Lance Collard would be the way I'd be thinking. And with West Coast here as well, if they've moved this pick, I'm just thinking ahead to where their next one would be. So yeah, it's not even on this board. So yeah, that would be the dilemma. So Harley Reid, you've obviously got the versatility factor there. Then you've got the key defender in Curtin. So that could be even the two best players in the draft based on at least my rankings. Pick 21, West Coast. So yeah, I'm just thinking too, well, how confident would West Coast be with their midfield in the long run? Well, it's an aging midfield. And with forwards, they can pick them any time. But again, thinking to future drafts, well, if West Coast are trading their future first and it's a midfielders draft next year from sort of my understanding of it in advance, that's the other thing I'd have to think too. So maybe they go with a midfielder here. So maybe George Stevens might be the pick as a midfielder for further help. Although, yeah, again, just thinking about their picks last year, they went with two mids last year, didn't they, with their first two? So, yeah, Collard, I'll go with for the sake of that argument. Although Stevens, I think, would be probably their other on their draft board around here that they would weigh very closely. Even, again, Ashton Moir, maybe. And if West Coast don't trade this pick, if a Collard isn't here, yeah, look out for those names. Probably a Stevens or Moir for the sake of that argument. And at this pick, if this was GWS taking, I'm just thinking aloud who they would take. Maybe someone like a Leak. Not sure who they'd take necessarily. But yeah, I'd imagine maybe if it's GWS picking, maybe a Leak because they've got a few sort of youngish key defenders still with some scope to develop where they have to sort of figure out, are they going to be long-term pieces? So back to North Melbourne. Obviously, they've let go of Goldstein, and I'm just thinking you've obviously got Tristan Jerry, so maybe he'll be their number one. They've got Coleman Jones. Just thinking who else they've got in their rucks. I think they've recently got probably another sort of state league ruck, so I'm just thinking that's a maybe. Maybe they go down that route. And obviously you've got Collingwood with the next pick that, yeah, look, they could probably do with a ruck or maybe key positioner or general defender. I think that'd be probably their shopping list. But, yeah, North Melbourne won't be too fussed about that, given they don't have any picks after that. Roberts, maybe. Reed, maybe. Again, they need the key forward. Green, maybe. Edwards, don't know a heap about him. In sort of having a quick look at him previously, it just seems like he's sort of an athletic mid who, came into the team late. So, I guess if someone's after more of a speedy, speculative mid, maybe if they're willing to take a risk, maybe. But North Melbourne don't really need the mid, so I'm not going to give them a mid. They've got too many already. Schoenmaker, maybe. I could see that potentially. Okay. Yeah, look, I'll go Archie Roberts, given North Melbourne need the boost in defence, and he's rated best available, so let's go that way. So just thinking to North Melbourne's picks, so McKercher, sort of your wing mid. Dersma, you've got as more your sort of high-leaping forward. Key defender, general defender. Okay, they're looking fairly balanced now. North Melbourne, the other thing I'm thinking too is I'm going to assume they're going to be bad for a few more years. No offense, North Melbourne fans, but you've lost a few key players and you were second from bottom last year. So in losing the likes of whether it's Zeeble and Cunnington to retirement, you've lost obviously Ben McKay as a free agent. So it will take North Melbourne a few years. So look, given that there should be more opportunities for some good key forwards. So given that, I think they do overlook Archer Reed in sort of using that logic. Don't need a mid. And then you've got sort of a few rucks projecting as the first ones to be taken. So with the previous pick, general defender, so maybe they go for something a bit different. Forwards, they've already got. So I think we're probably looking at maybe a ruckman for North Melbourne. So let's go with Will Green if he's viewed as the top one here. Over to Collingwood. So let's see what they can do. There is also use for some midfielders. So I think they would consider a midfielder. Maybe a George Stevens could make sense. And that's a pick that I would be strongly considering myself from a Collingwood perspective. Schoenmaker could be a good fit. They do need the height. Don't know if he's necessarily going to be the key defender, but tempting. Jayath, I could see the fit potentially. Collingwood, I do think there's room for another general defender. And assuming he's anything like his brother, I think that style of play may appeal to Collingwood. So that's already sort of locked in as a possible consideration. Lual, like him as well, similar player. Could be another to consider. I've heard links to Cleary being maybe bid on by Collingwood, so let's go with that first to give me a bit more thinking time in Collingwood's position. Just looking down the list. Ruckman, possible. Who was the other one we had up here? Mitch Edwards as well as the other possibility. So they're the ruckman that Collingwood would be possibly considering if they go that route. Philactes could be one where certainly a stylistic fit. He'd be like another sort of Oleg Markov, the way he sort of takes on the game. Will Graham, another sort of defender, mid-defender. And I've actually heard links with him to Collingwood, so maybe I'll do another bid. Let's see if we can stretch Gold Coast and see what happens with them. Okay, they're matching, so that gives me a third shot at a player for Collingwood. And again, this is my best guess as to who goes where. Haven't spent any meaningful time looking into who goes where or following the rumours. So let's see what I can do. I could see Jayath in Collingwood colours. Don't know if there's any links. I haven't heard anything, but I think Collingwood may consider a general defender, and he might be one that could be a consideration. So let's go that way. Now we're back to Adelaide again. So what have I got Adelaide so far? So key defender, general defender. It is their defence that I feel needs work mostly, and then otherwise probably the ruck. So let's look at the ruckman available, given they've added their defenders. So you've got Mitch Edwards. That's a possibility. And the other ruckman, you've got Goad. And he's a South Australian boy, so I'll assume that they go the local talent. And look, he's got scope to develop. He's obviously very athletic, got the basketball background. So, yeah, let's go that route for them with that pick. And then we're back to the Saints. And what have I given the Saints so far? Okay, so you've got a sort of versatile, explosive type who can play a little bit of anywhere. So that gives me a bit of flexibility with this pick. I think a key defender would be nice for the Saints. I'll just have a look at what we've got. Schoenmaker's not quite sort of your key defender. He's more of a rebounding super boot. So have to go a fair way down the list to actually get a key defender, it looks like. So possibility. But with St Kilda, I find they mostly go Victorian talent, sometimes South Australians. So I think they'll probably go more that way versus going for a Western Australian. Any others? I have to go a fair way down this list. Will Dawson. Yeah, you've obviously had Zach Dawson, who's played for the Saints. I don't know why he's listed as late to rookie. I would have thought he's a bit earlier. My evaluation in looking at his numbers and sort of thinking about his game was quite good, and a 2-meter key defender as well. I'm not sure why he's listed as a utility. Maybe he's played a bit of other positions. But yeah, I was sort of looking at him as more of a key defender. I'm tempted to go Dawson. So other options, it's just there's not really the key defenders before this. That's the thing. So maybe St Kilda based on draft Phantom reach, but I actually don't think it's a reach. So yeah, tell me at home if any of you think it's a reach to be going for Dawson, but I don't think it is. I think this is actually a good spot for him to go. Carlton, so they need a few more avenues to goal. So they don't need the key forward. It's more the general forwards they need, I would have thought. Moir, Deline, there are a few. That's probably the way I'm leaning at this stage. Could go with a general defender, but I personally like Carlton's defense. Gothard, maybe. It's another option. Sanchez, maybe. Jack Callan, maybe. But yeah, with Carlton, it's just really a case of, well, they've got the talls, they've got the mids. On the outside, they're looking fine now. Their defense is looking good, so I think they'll go forwards. Let's give him Ashton Moir. And again, I'll work under the assumption that this pick was traded, so I'm going to pretend this is a GWS pick. So I'll have to think about who they would like. So have GWS got anyone yet? So again, I'm pretending this is West Coast. And I haven't familiarized myself too much with who's picking where and what the order is. That's why I'm having to obviously go through each of these. So that's West Coast I'm betting on. So, okay, so I'm pretending this is the first pick of GWS. Yeah, I think it is. Okay. So pretending this is GWS's first pick. So thinking about what they would like. Archer Reed, look, they could do with a key forward, so that's a possibility. And it's just with Hogan obviously sort of being older. And look, they did obviously pick one last year, go with the key forward, but they could maybe do with a second, so that's a consideration if they like him. George Stevens, again, yeah, look, having Toby Green not sure is necessary. Ruckman, just thinking, do they need it? With Briggs developing, just thinking of their depth behind him. He's a good age where he should be right going forward. Ari Schoenmaker, maybe for some rebound. Yeah, this is a hard pick, actually. I'm not too sure who GWS would go with. Thinking to their forwards, so sort of looking localish, they could consider. Yeah, look, I'll give him a forward. I think that might be an okay play. So again, pick 30, this is GWS, I'm assuming. And I'll do two more picks. Once I get sort of into the 30s, And look, this isn't a full Phantom draft just because it stops at 48. I'm sure there will be more picks than 48 on draft day. It'd be great actually if you actually had all the picks plugged into this and it's just draft Phantom updated to do all that. I think that'd be a pretty cool feature, again, for the future. And not denigrating the website at all. I think this is actually a pretty cool tool, and it means I don't have to go through and make like a document with all these picks. So thank you to the creators who have made this useful and very time-effective tool in my case. So I don't have to spend too long working on this. So you've got Geelong next. So what have I given Geelong? Okay, Nate Caddy, so they've got their forward. So I don't think they'll need another forward. So I'll pass on Archer Reid. Charlie Edwards maybe, if he's one of the assumed best midfielders here, that's a possibility. Although Geelong don't tend to go with too many Vic Metro boys. They do like their country boys more, particularly if there's any local Geelong talents. So yeah, maybe I'll actually look, are there any sort of local Geelong talents? That's maybe a point of curiosity. Mitch Edwards maybe, they could do with a longer term ruck, possibly. Schoenmaker maybe. Jack Deline, maybe. Again, Geelong don't mind going into staters. Oh, Angus Hasty. So Geelong Falcon. So you've gone the forward. They could possibly do with a general defender. So I'll strongly consider that. Any others? I should really look further down the board to see if there's any that have been misplaced based on sort of my thinking. Nah. There's none that sort of pop out as guys that should go earlier. So out of probably not Edwards, maybe Stevens, maybe Mitch Edwards, maybe Schoenmaker, maybe Deline, maybe Hasty. They're probably the ones I'd be thinking about. Yeah. Stevens tempting, and this is a good range for him. But Geelong like their local talents. They too often surprise by going with someone local with their picks. So let's go Hasty. I think they might possibly go that direction. Carlton. So what have we given them? Did they have any earlier picks? No. Okay. So I've got Ashton Moir here. Archer Reid. Would they consider another key forward? No. Can't see that with obviously, you've got Harry and you've got Charlie, so nah. Edwards, they don't need the mid. George Stevens, they don't need the mid. Mitch Edwards, I think they'll be pretty happy with their De Koning-Pitternet combination, so probably not. Schoenmaker, maybe. Lumen Lual, maybe. Sanchez possible. Jack Callanan possible. Yeah, look, I'll go 2 South Australian forwards. Let's make it Jack Deline. Maybe it's just a case of I don't respect Carlton's front half enough, but yeah, that's the way I've gone. So yeah, to take you through the picks, so you can have a look here. And again, the assumed trades I'm going to assume, and I think there'll be probably more than just the one draft day trade, but I'm going to assume that if Curtin makes it to pick 9, which I will for the purposes of this draft, he could just as easily go to, maybe it's a Hawthorn, maybe it's a Melbourne here. There's some of the other possible situations, but if Curtin makes it here, I will work off the assumption that West Coast do a trade for pick 9, and I think they will also, in such a trade, receive this pick here, which after all the moving becomes 21. And I think they will also receive the GWS 2024 first. And I'm going to work under the assumption that GWS don't have as strong of a season. I don't think they're going to be a top 4 team or one of the 4 final teams remaining next season. Maybe some of you at home think that that might be the case, but yeah, for me, I'm just not quite as optimistic about GWS. I don't think they're quite that team. Maybe they're top 8. They've got that chance, but top 4, I think, is against the odds. I think to be reasonable in my perspective. So, but yeah, it would be West Coast giving up their 2024 first, and by the sounds of it, this as it's standing here, at least pick 30, assuming it's around that range. So it's obviously a pick that moves back. So, they're the assumptions. So I've got here, this is West Coast. We had, this one was West Coast and this one was GWS, to be able to interpret this fully. So just to give you a last moment to have a look through it. Look, I'm fairly happy with this. Some of the picks I found particularly hard to make. The challenging ones, for the most part, I found were Sydney. I wasn't really sure on that one. You could have Wilson going maybe a few selections back. The St Kilda pick here, wasn't really too sure. Melbourne here, do they go with Windsor? I'm not really too sure. What else? Croft and McCabe, do they get bid on this early? I'm not sure, but Adelaide have been tempted before. Ollie Murphy, not sure where he goes exactly. Yeah, and these North Melbourne picks, really from here I found it was pretty hard to pick, and even the Adelaide pick with Riley Hardiman. Once it gets into this range, it's pretty hard to pick, honestly, and yeah, I'm just really guessing. And having a bit of a laugh with, obviously you've got Will Dawson here, with the Zach Dawson being with the Saints. It's just, I don't know, to me it's humorous having a Dawson anyway. So, let me know what you think of my list. If I did 33 to 48, look, I don't think, I'd be guessing. I haven't followed the rumours. I don't know who clubs in those ranges have been looking at. I haven't been viewing any other Phantoms. Hopefully there's at least some people who have followed my tradition of doing every pick, every bid. If not, that's an opportunity for any of those who like covering the draft. That's something where, for me, it's just a standard practice where you want to have the best draft profiles and you want to give the fans every pick, every bid. So, if there's no Phantoms doing that, and I don't believe in years past other Phantoms have. I don't know if it's just people haven't had the mathematical skills to be able to work out all the bidding and all that sort of matching and where all the picks end up after that. But for me at least, if you want to do a good Phantom draft, that's the rule set that I would follow, where I'd have the expectation of making every pick, every bid without exception, making sure you've got good, accurate profiles for each individual player. That's something I sort of took pride in doing over the years, where I really wanted to make sure that, with every player, you'd really understand their games inside out. And if you wanted to find out about a lot of these players, admittedly, some of these weren't in my top 60 power rankings, just because prior to the exercise, obviously, I hadn't looked at a tool or resource such as this that really had projected ranges or feels for where any of them would go. But my power rankings, of course, different to this, is where I rated talents. Whereas this, it's just purely and simply where I believe players will land on draft day. So, and you can again have another look at the second round that I've produced here. So, let me know in the comments section below what are some of your Phantom drafts. Make sure you check out draftphantom.com. I think they've done a terrific job with this. And if I was to suggest any possible room for improvement, I'd say, include every single pick and every bid. That's a great opportunity for you to further enhance this website. I think that's a great opportunity. I don't know how easy it would be to program all that to be a possibility, but I think that'd be a pretty cool enhancement. And the other thing I'd say as well is, if you've got the opportunity to make it so that you can actually do pick trading, including pick trading of future picks, I think that'd be pretty cool extensions to even enhance this website further. So, also let me know as well, would you be happy if the draft went this way with a lot of these picks? And again, admittedly, I haven't followed any of the draft coverage or conversations around, who likes which players and what the fans like with each particular pick. Look, I just haven't had that exposure this year to know sort of what the fans want. But this is just me sort of looking at, where are the clubs mostly lacking, who roughly sort of fits into what range, and thinking about some of their draft tendencies. So, hopefully you've picked up on some of the draft tendencies that I've picked up on over the years with a few of the clubs. So whether it's Geelong with their bias towards going with, local Geelong Falcons talent, or a lot of the interstate teams, if they're looking at Victorians, they'll more often than not go with country boys and leave the metro boys for the Victorian clubs. That's one of the other tendencies there. So, there's some of my thoughts with this Phantom draft. So, hope you enjoyed. And, let me know if you're interested in some post-draft analysis. That's something that I'm strongly considering at this stage. But yeah, once that's done, I'll need to have a think about sort of over the holiday period. So for me, luckily, working in a school, I do get the full school holidays. And yeah, being in the private system, I wrap up a bit earlier. So that's a real luxury for me. So it's I've been sort of thinking about as a passion project, potentially looking at going through drafts past and really looking at, well, if I was to reorder them, where should the talent be reordered? And also looking at, as part of that as well, those who have been overlooked in various drafts, and if they weren't overlooked, where would they actually fit? So that would be also an interesting thought as well. So you'd have your various mature ages sort of being able to fit into drafts earlier than they were drafted as well. So that's a component I'm thinking about including in that exercise. And it's also something that I fully expect will be quite revealing into how useful mature ages are and how they are picked much, much later than they really should be. So with a lot of actually the mature ages working out as some of the very best players in the draft and actually taking up a greater concentration within the top 20 if you redo drafts than you'd expect. So just in me sort of having mentally gone through doing some drafts past and having done that for fans in the past, that's something I've done. And look, I'm thinking about doing it over this Christmas holiday period, but yeah, I'll have a think about, do I really want to put the energy into that? Because if I'm going to do that, I'm going to do it properly. But yeah, if I'm finding I'm getting a lot of support and a lot of interest from you in the comment section below, and yeah, a lot of sort of enthusiasm towards it, maybe I will. Maybe it's time to sort of put that knowledge out there to correct some of the misconceptions around mature age draft talent, and really to, I guess, give people a greater knowledge around what are some of the opportunities, and really looking at some of the other nuances as well. So within that, maybe I'll look at, well, maybe a key position player is taken too early on average. Maybe if they're picked in, say, the top 5, is that way too early? So some of those other nuances as well I'm going to look at. So I'll go into the exercise with an open mind and really go through some of the things that I'm picking up on. So for an early hint, that's probably a few of the themes, again, just from sort of in my head, sort of thinking about in the past where some of the talent should go in various drafts, some of the things I've thought about. But yeah. Anyway, I might see you for some potential post-draft stuff. So yeah, let me know if that's something of interest. And if so, then maybe I'll turn up Monday night and Tuesday night for some sort of draft wrap-ups and just give some sort of takes. And yeah, let me know what sort of things you'd be interested in if I was to do that. That'd be interesting to hear. Whether it's I just talk about picks, whether I don't know, whether I grade teams on like who are the winners, who are the losers. I'm open-minded to what sort of thing I do in response to this year's draft if I go ahead. But yeah, looking at some of the view count numbers and the amount of interest, the amount of likes I've been receiving, and the general positivity to producing draft content, look, I think I actually probably will yeah, go ahead with some draft reviews. So yeah, again, hope you enjoyed, and yeah, hopefully see you in the next video. See you for now.